해외 지식인들에게 한국인들은 흥미로운 연구 대상 중 하나입니다. 한국인들에 대해 더 많이 알고 싶어 깊게 파고들어 연구하는 학자들이 있는데요. 오늘 소개해드릴 분은 에드워드 슐츠, 미국 하와이대 교수로 미국 사회의 한국의 역사와 문화를 알리려고 노력해온 인물입니다. 오랫동안 연구한 결과 한국인보다 한국을 더 잘 알게 된 슐츠 교수는 한국인들도 몰랐던 한국 이야기를 알려주었는데요. 그는 아주 오래전부터 이어져 온 한국인들의 특징을 주제로 강연을 했었습니다. 그가 말하는 한국인들의 특징에는 무엇이 있는지 영상을 통해 확인해 보겠습니다.
I first came here in 1966 as a Peace Corps volunteer, and I was almost immediately struck by its history. And one of the first things that I've noticed that really stood out for me about Korea was the Koreans and their passion for history, their love for history, their interest in history. From earliest times on, Koreans were writing histories. The Chosun Kingdom, which was the last major kingdom from 1392 to 1910, had just a tremendous bounty of resources. And it's just staggering the amount that was written. Staggering in part because we've lost so much of that history as well. The earliest extant history we have now is called the History of the Three Kingdoms. And that was written in 1145. And that's the earliest history. But if you read these histories, they mention the countless number of other histories that also were written. And so you get a taste of how rich the past must have been, how rich the archives must have been, which have now been lost. Realize that what we see today in terms of the historical record is very paltry compared to what was actually composed.
그의 말에 따르면 한국인들은 기록의 민족이라고 합니다. 한국의 역사서 중 가장 오래된 삼국사기를 예시로 들었죠. 삼국사기뿐만 아니라 이후 고려시대와 조선시대에 쓰인 각종 역사서와 기록물들을 보면 한국인들이 얼마나 기록에 열정적이고 기록에 진심인지 알 수 있다고 합니다. 그는 이어서 한국의 지리에 대해 이야기하기 시작하는데요.
Whenever we talk about Korea, we really need to also focus on geography, because geography has had such a direct impact upon the Koreans and how they developed their lives. Although China played an important role in Korea's history, Koreans were also very sensitive to the fact that they didn't want to be controlled by China. They very carefully talked about how, in terms of geography, in terms of culture, we are different from China. And this came out very clearly back in the 10th century when the founding king of Koryo Kingdom, in these 10 injunctions, he has one clear statement saying, admire China, work with China, but don't needlessly copy China. Subsequently, other writers of the Koryo period also took the very same tack, saying, we rely on China, China has lots for our culture, but we are different. We're not going to just copy whatever China produced. But this underlying theme that we see almost from the start is the importance of cultural borrowing. The importance of relying upon outside influences when they're pertinent, but don't be overwhelmed by outside influences. And geography clearly has a role in terms of foreign invasions. So when you talk about Korean history, you have to remember the sorry part, it's these countless invasions. But equally important is the resistance. And that's where the Korean identity comes through. This man, Ulchi Mundok, played a major role in defeating the Sui. And they say that the Sui dynasty sent 300,000 people, soldiers to Korea, 2,700 returned. So effective was his defense. Equally, when you go into the Tang incursions, you had King Munmu. When the Khitans came in the 10th century, this particular scholar by the name of Sohi, he dramatically argued that Koryo was a free and independent country and it had every right to be in the northern part of the peninsula. And he was so convincing that the Khitan troops withdrew. And then perhaps one of Korea's most famous scholars, a man by the name of Lee Gyu-bo, when the Mongols invaded, he wrote these appeals to the Mongol emperor, which theoretically brought tears to the eyes of the emperor, claiming Koryo is indeed a free country and the Mongols should in fact withdraw. And I want to point out that Koryo resisted the Mongols longer than any other people in the world. Ultimately, they failed, but they put up such a dramatic resistance that they won the respect of the Mongols. So resistance is certainly one of the key themes that we find in Korean history, and this is the way the Koreans were able to develop an identity unique within East Asia. Now, of course, when we talk about resistance, the guy who's standing across the street is probably the most famous in terms of the resistance, and of course, that's Lee Sun-shin. But realize these were just the heroes. But besides these heroes, there were the average people, the common people who came forward to the defense of their kingdoms, who also deserved to be written down as heroes. Their names have been lost to history, but they nevertheless played the key role in keeping Korea a separate, identifiable state.
에드워드 슐츠 교수가 꼽은 한국인들의 두 번째 특징은 바로 저항입니다. 외세의 침략에도 무너지지 않고 똘똘 뭉쳐 대항했던 것이죠. 그가 말하는 한국인들의 놀라운 특징 세 번째는 2부에서 공개하도록 하겠습니다.